shuffle. So I'm glad we connected. Where are you located?
I'm in Sarasota, Florida.
Okay, right on. Yeah,
Where are you?
I'm in Kansas City, Missouri.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Missouri.
yes,
Missouri.
Missouri. Yeah,
Very
I've been down to Sarasota a few times. That was
cool.
the first time my son saw the ocean down in Siesta Key.
I love that. Do you have family here or were you just here on vacation?
Vacation. Yeah.
Nice.
So,
It's a great place to visit.
oh
So
yeah. Yeah, it's wonderful. I love the ocean. And we're landlocked, so we don't get to see much of anything around here.
yeah,
So,
I can't imagine living. I was born and raised here, and then I did live in California for a little bit, but I can't imagine living in a place where I'm not next to the ocean.
yeah, I every time I travel to the ocean, I can't imagine like why I'm not next to a body of water. So
Right?
it's all good, but it's great to meet you. And I want to begin our conversation with surviving the last 3.5 years, getting through a pandemic. How did you
Yeah.
get through that, and how did it change you?
Um, wow, I was not expecting that question. That's a great question. I did what most people shouldn't have done, which I quit an essential job in the middle of a pandemic. So my job was considered essential. I was working overtime as a social worker, and there was so much shift happening during that time. It was very contagious because people were having to adjust and be creative. And I think I caught that bug, and during that time, I was offered a writing opportunity. I've always been a writer, and it's always been something that I've done throughout my life. And so when the opportunity came up to start my own copywriting agency, I quit my 60-hour a week social work job that was essential and reliable money and decided to be an entrepreneur and start my own business, which was,
Sure.
looking back, I was like, man, that was ballsy. But my husband was like, go, babe, you've got this, you can do it. So,
Yeah.
and it turned out to be wildly successful over the next couple of years because everyone was moving online and they needed great copy and they needed to learn communication skills. And I was able to provide small businesses and large businesses with the copy they needed in order to get the sales they needed during that time. So it was actually quite a perfect transition.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. If I put you in front of a bunch of third graders and one of the kids looked up and asked you, what do you do for a living? How would you answer them?
Well, now it's a little bit more complicated because while I still have the copywriting business and while I still write ads and commercials and scripts and all the words you see on the internet for everyone, I also help run an investment group. So if I was to explain that, I would say I write words on the internet and I write books. And then I also help run a place where people give us money to help multiply their money through an online Amazon FBA.
So, what did you want to be when you were younger, when you were around the third grade? What was your dream?
My dream was to be a journalist or to be a secret agent, which kind of fun because I got to do both. Essentially, I was a writer and I am a writer. And so I'm writing constantly. I help write books for influencers across the nation. I'm writing for Automation Empire and for the company I work here. And then previously, I was working undercover as an anti-sex trafficking specialist. So I was allowed to work with FDLE, work with all the different government agencies to help bust trafficking rings, which was pretty cool. So I got to live out all my dreams and now beyond, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm curious. I would imagine with reading your bio and your history and going through the trauma that you've gone through, that you decided to get into social work. What was that decision like? Did you, I mean, because sometimes you would figure you'd want to distance yourself from that, but obviously it was something where you wanted to help people. How did that work for you?
Well, I did it the wrong way. So I jumped in way too early, most likely, and I would not suggest doing that. But I had an overwhelming need to make what I went through worth something for good. I had to find a silver lining in it, and that need for redemption drove me to jump into social work right away, where maybe it would have been more healthy for me to focus on therapy first and then do that. But it turned out okay. So I didn't have a full idea of what had actually happened to me. In my mind, what I believed to be true was I had had an abusive relationship, not that it was sex trafficking. And so as I started to work in the organization that I was in, I'm interviewing these women coming into safe housing, and their stories are sounding really familiar. You know, there's like, huh, this sounds like my last relationship. This is so weird. And then came to the realization that I actually was sex trafficked, went through prior messages that I'd shared with my trafficker and realized that there was an exchange of money for uh, my abuse. And so, yeah, that's how I kind of came to that realization. And it was really, I mean, jokes on him, it turned out really good to where I was a great anti-sex trafficking specialist. I had all the information and tools and knowledge to be really good at that. So that was a part of that redemption process. But I would really encourage people to make sure that they go to therapy first, and otherwise they'll keep self-violating and perpetuating the trauma. If they're not healed for it and they keep putting themselves back in it, which can feel really comforting at the time, but leaves you feeling really icky later on. So I would definitely wholeheartedly suggest a good amount of therapy before jumping into something like that, because it is strenuous.
Yeah. So it seems like writing has kind of been a saving grace for you. How did that like desire to either read or write, all of those things, how did that happen for you?
It started at a really young age. I was homeschooled, so I was naturally reading a lot and writing a lot. And the organizations I was involved with, the homeschool organization I was involved with, my parents put us in 4-H. My parents put us in all these different Toastmasters and speaking groups. So it was a very normal thing for me to read and write constantly. And then as I grew, I found it as a safer way to express myself because I didn't have a lot of emotional discipline. And especially when I was going through these abusive situations, it was a great safe outlet for me to utilize versus speaking out, because speaking out would get me into more trouble and more pain. And again, the silver lining in that is, you know, I've written books for numerous people that are bestsellers. I've written federal legislation. I'm writing ad copy for a multi-million-dollar organization now. So it's really played into a wonderful skill that was kind of forced upon me, but here we are using it to make money. So
Yeah, for sure. So who's been a hero for you in your life?
oof, that's a good question. My father, definitely. He is a man who, I mean, I can't, he's 100% my hero. He has endured so much and done so much with so little, and he never let it squash his creativity. So I mean, we were pretty poor growing up, and he worked his butt off, you know, multiple jobs, would still make time to engage with us as children and teach us things and make us feel special. And then also, you know, he was always constantly drawing and writing and creating and starting side hustles. And I believe that a lot of my personality comes from him, and a lot of my driving factors in the entrepreneurship realm come from him and have made me successful because I watched my dad do it over and over again. So I knew I could do it. So he's my hero.
So if you can meet anybody alive, an inspirational person or anybody alive on the planet right now and spend some time with them, who would it be?
Oof. Anybody currently existing, man, probably right now, Ed Milet. He is a fantastic podcaster and probably the best storyteller and public speaker I've ever had the pleasure of seeing in my entire life. And I've seen a lot of people on stage, I've been to a lot of events. And he's an incredible storyteller. I would love to have him mentor me and sit under his mentorship because he's absolutely brilliant.
So speaking of mentorship and doing things, what is your motivation every day? What gets you out of bed? What gets you to want to accomplish what you want to get done and evolve?
I have this innate sense of responsibility that has always been in me. And this might sound arrogant, but I've always been aware of kind of like this destiny on my life. And I've been able to do things where other people can't. I've been able to get into rooms where other people can't. I've been able to meet people and pull off things consistently that other people would say, that's crazy, that's insane, that doesn't make any sense, because I follow my intuition and gut. So with that, comes a very driving sense of responsibility. If I have this ability, then I'm responsible to use it for good. It's kind of like that Spider-Man, with great power comes great
Yep.
responsibility. And because of the life experiences I've had, I again feel a responsibility to educate and inspire. And now that I have, 80 employees underneath me here at Automation Empire, I literally have people dependent on me for their money, for their Christmas bonus, for their family. And that is a huge driving factor of, okay, well, I've got to be 80 times more successful so that these 80 employees can be successful in their own right as well.
So what's one of your most daring stories of meeting somebody and getting in there and doing something that was pretty magnanimous?
Oh, Lord. Uh, well, two stories pop into my head. One is I went to Thailand to work undercover to bust trafficking rings there. And we went up to the borderline between Thailand and Myanmar, or Burma, whichever you want to call it. And there's a civil war that's been going on for about 70 years now, within Burma. So you have a massive refugee crisis of Korean refugees coming over the border into Thailand. And they can't work, they can't do anything in Thailand because they don't have Thai ID. So this is creating a crisis of trafficking and slavery and all this stuff. So I'm in the camp there on the borderline, and I get an opportunity to cross the border illegally, Rambo style, in the bottom of a boat. So I hide in the bottom of a boat. We go across the river. I meet the general of the Burmese army, who's absolutely butchering these people that I'm trying to save. And I somehow convince him that these children that he has enslaved, the educated slaves make better slaves. So that's what I convinced him to give me the children so that they can go to the school in Thailand. And then, when school's up, I'll send them back, which of course I had no intention of sending them back.
Yeah.
But he thinks just because I'm an American, I must be some sort of high ranking American person, that
Yeah.
I'm there in Burma, because you don't get to go there. And so he agreed somehow, and we were able to get 62 children out of his slave camp and get them into freedom. So that was probably my biggest bluff. And I mean, they're sitting around massive AKs and machine guns. They
Sure.
have no problem butchering people.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they didn't choose to kidnap me and ransom me at that point, but
Wow.
fortunately they didn't. And
Yeah.
fortunately, I was dumb enough to say yes and go do it. So that's one of them.
Wow, that's wild. So as a writer, what was the first thing you wrote where you were like, I got it. This makes sense. This is kind of a manifest destiny.
It was probably the birth of social media, when I was actually getting outside opinions on the type of things I was writing and posting. Because I would just post my thoughts or my ideas uh, on current events, and people would just flock to it. And so, I mean, I grew up without internet, I grew up without TV, I grew up without movies or music. So I had this kind of blank canvas. And so when I started forming thoughts, they were actually my own. And I think people nowadays, there's so much information, there's so much thought coming from so many thought leaders and books and places you can get information, that people forget to internalize what they're learning and create original content or original ideas or original thoughts out of that. They just copy and paste, they just repeat and regurgitate.
Mhm.
Where I had the great ability to form these original ideas and then put them out on the internet without much influence, and people would respond to that. I'm like, oh, I think I'm actually good at this, because of the reactions I was getting from people and the way it was affecting people emotionally. I saw how it could affect people emotionally, and then I knew I had to curate that skill.
What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
That I'm 100% in control of my destiny and my emotions, and that I'm here right now because of every single decision I made. It's an idea of complete and total ownership. So that makes me 1,000% responsible, 1,000% guilty, 1,000% powerful and right. And so if I can maintain that, no matter how painful it is, you have to take the good with the bad. I can create whatever future I want.
So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the version of you from like high school, senior in high school. You can give that version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained so far in your life. What advice would you dispense on your young version?
to trust your gut. I think, we often, you hear a lot about people talking about how men don't know how to engage in emotion. They have no emotional intelligence or awareness, in general sense.
Yeah.
And women, we generally don't have emotional discipline. And I think that's a very less talked about subject because it's not as fun to talk about. But as women, we are innate creatures, we are emotional creatures, and that can be our greatest ally and strength if we're taught to use it appropriately and if we use discipline in conjunction with the emotions. And so we all have this innate sense of intuition and gut, and I wish I would have listened to it more. I don't regret anything in my life because it's afforded me some incredible experiences and skills. So I wouldn't go back and necessarily change anything, but I would just encourage myself to trust my intuition more.
So of all of the things that you've done and overcome and become in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Probably the federal legislation I've written. I wanted to make a impact bigger than just, me speaking with this person, me interacting with one person at a time, which I'm sure is an impact, obviously, because, many lives have been saved because of that. But the legislation allowed for funding to be released so that people all over the nation could do that. And I'm pretty freaking proud of that situation because that was an impossible situation that should have never happened. I don't have any college degrees. I don't have a traditional upbringing. So like my education is non-existent due to the way I was raised, but I've learned and I've grown. And so it's cool to have been able to play that role within the government,
Yeah.
little old me. So that's pretty cool.
So as obviously someone that's adventurous, that's traveled a lot, let's say we get off the phone here, off the Zoom call, and a time machine pulls up in front of your house or your business, and you can go anywhere in the history of time and see one event with your own eyes. What would you love to have seen unfold?
Good Lord.
It's a
My
lot
mind's
of
like,
things.
yeah, yeah. I don't like Roman Empire really fascinates me. I would think I would want to see somebody operating in pure leadership and raw power. That just fascinates me. So whether it be like Cleopatra operating in her strength and her power, or you know, Marcus Aurelius, or something like that, I think would be interesting. But as far as a particular moment in time, maybe when they were signing the Declaration of Independence, that would be pretty cool to
Yeah.
be in this room with those young guys who were doing something just absolutely unheard of at such a young age. And the weight of that moment would be pretty wild.
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm someone dedicated to everyone's best ability. My biggest strength and weakness is I want and believe in people so much more than they normally believe in themselves that it's sometimes a very painful experience to watch them not rise to their potential. Um, so I know I'm aggressive. I know I'm ambitious. I know I'm loud sometimes. Uh, but I'm so passionately in love with the people around me and want the best for them. So I hope that comes out in people's experience of me as well.
So if anyone out there wants to get involved with your writing, learn more about you, reach out, anything about your world, where do they go?
Instagram, I'm a boomer, so I'm on Instagram. So my handle is Amanda Catarzi, my maiden name, just all together, Amanda Catarzi. You can find me on there. Definitely DM me anytime. I love interesting conversations and helping people.
Amanda,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for your story. Have a great holiday season. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate you.
Thank you.